Welcome to an FYIVT video summary of the black goo in green legislation. A world where renewable energy, electric vehicles, and clean technologies promise to save our planet. Every day, we're told that transitioning away from fossil fuels is not only essential, but that it's the only way to prevent environmental disaster. But here's a question few seem willing to ask. At what cost? Today, we'll uncover the hidden side of green energy, the black goo in green legislation. Stick around, because this isn't just another environmental video. It's time to take a deep dive into the real consequences of our drive toward green energy. At the heart of many of the technologies behind our clean energy transition is a metal called cobalt, a key component in lithium-ion batteries, used in everything from electric vehicles to your smartphone. And unfortunately, the reality behind this essential resource is far from green. Over 60% of the world's cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. While this might sound like a typical sourcing issue, the conditions under which cobalt is mined are downright horrific. In the DRC, children as young as 6 work in dangerous, unregulated mines. They dig with their bare hands, inhaling toxic dust without any safety equipment. It's estimated that over 40,000 children are involved in cobalt mining operations across the country. The worst part? These aren't just isolated incidents. We're talking about widespread practices that are in direct conflict with the ethics of sustainability. And it gets worse. Evidence suggests that many of these workers, including children, are essentially living under slave labor conditions, forced to work long hours with little to no pay under threats and coercion. Despite pledges from tech giants like Tesla, Apple, and others to clean up their supply chains, these abuses persist. The demand for cobalt, driven by the green tech boom, is outpacing ethical reform. So while we may see shiny electric cars on the streets of the West, it's important to ask ourselves, at what human cost? But the human cost of green energy is only half the story. Let's talk about what happens to these green technologies once they reach the end of their life cycle. You see, while they might be clean while they're in use, when they're disposed of, it's a completely different story. Take solar panels, for example. They're marketed as the future of sustainable energy, but when they wear out, typically after 25 to 30 years, they become hazardous waste. Solar panels contain cadmium and lead, both of which can leach into the environment if not disposed of properly. And this isn't just a hypothetical problem. In fact, many regions lack the infrastructure to handle the proper disposal of solar panels, meaning these toxic materials often end up contaminating soil and groundwater. The same goes for lithium-ion and lead-acid batteries, both vital to electric vehicles. These batteries contain a cocktail of hazardous chemicals like cobalt, nickel, and lithium. When these batteries are improperly discarded, these chemicals seep into the ground, harming ecosystems and eventually human health. So while the transition to electric vehicles is seen as a victory for sustainability, the growing pile of e-waste it generates is quietly becoming a ticking time bomb. If you think these issues are only happening in wealthy countries, think again. Much of the world's electronic waste, including discarded solar panels and batteries, ends up in developing countries like India and China. In these places, informal recycling operations handle vast amounts of e-waste, but without safety protocols in place. Workers, often untrained and living in poverty, manually dismantle electronics using unsafe methods like burning cables or soaking components in acid baths. This releases a toxic mix of chemicals into the air, water, and soil, causing widespread contamination that endangers local communities. India's e-waste sites contain dangerously high levels of lead and mercury. Places like Guiyu in China have become infamous for their role in the global e-waste trade. Entire cities have turned into toxic wastelands where people live among burning plastic and leaking chemicals, all in the name of recycling our green technologies. The question we have to ask ourselves is this: is this the future we want? A world where wealthier nations pass on the environmental costs to those with fewer resources? Is this what sustainability looks like? Here's the cold, hard truth. If we continue down this path without addressing the disposal problem, we could be facing a hazardous waste crisis like we've never seen before. The sheer volume of e-waste from solar panels, batteries, and other green technologies will continue to grow exponentially. Without robust recycling systems in place, this waste will lead to groundwater contamination, soil degradation, and the creation of toxic waste sites that could haunt our planet for decades. What was once seen as the solution to our environmental crisis could, ironically, become one of its major drivers. At the heart of the matter is an ethical dilemma. We can't ignore the very real, often hidden consequences of transitioning away from fossil fuels. From the exploitation of workers in cobalt mines to the looming environmental hazards of e-waste, the green movement is at a crossroads. Let's take a state like Vermont, for example. Vermont has long been seen as a leader in the fight against climate change. Its push for electric vehicles and renewable energy is commendable. But there's an elephant in the room. While Vermont focuses on local sustainability, the global exploitation and environmental degradation tied to the production and disposal of green technologies are often ignored. If we are to truly embrace sustainability, it can't just be about reducing emissions at home. It must be about ethical sourcing, responsible disposal, and a commitment to addressing the full life cycle of the technologies we're embracing. The good news is that there are solutions. We can push for a circular economy, one that promotes reusing and recycling materials, rather than simply discarding them. Governments and corporations can invest in sustainable mining practices and robust recycling systems to minimize the impact of these technologies on both people and the planet. But to do that, we need transparency, accountability, and above all, action. In conclusion, the green movement has brought us closer to a more sustainable future, but we can't afford to ignore its darker side. From the exploitation of child and forced labor in cobalt mining to the environmental degradation caused by improper e-waste disposal, the challenges we face are serious. But with a holistic approach, one that includes ethical sourcing, responsible waste management, and strong recycling systems, we can build a future where clean energy doesn't leave behind a toxic legacy. Thanks for watching, and remember, it's time to rethink how we define green. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video if you found it insightful. Visit the link in the description for the full article. Thanks for watching.